Okay, this episode we have CEO of Penn National Gaming, Jay Snowden, my boss. I have both of my bosses on this episode. I'm in the middle of boss inception. So before we do that, a quick word from our friends at Presidente Beer. We love Presidente Beer. ARod's been drinking it all summer long. Even if you are maybe saying summer's over and it's time for fall, well, guess what? Fall is football season. Fall is Presidente beer season. It is the perfect place to either drink it on the beach, the backyard, or on your couch when you're watching football come back. So with the title of Presidente Chairman, you know Alex knows this beer's a good bet. So what are you waiting for? Invest in your own refreshment now and grab DR's finest export wherever beers are sold near you. And for lucky fans, we're giving away some amazing prizes. Presidente beer for a year, signed baseball by myself and Alex, Presidente swag, and the Corp swag as well. Here's what you have to do to enter. You must be 21 plus, must be following ARod Corp, and Presidente USA, Presidente_USA on social media, and must text your name and why you should win to Alex's personal number, 305-690-0485. This beer is 100% Corp-certified and approved. Okay. Jay Snowden, Penn National Gaming. Like I said, my boss, Penn National Gaming bought Barstool Sports at the end of January in 2020. We interviewed Jay. He actually was heading to Las Vegas from the interview, and it was right before everything got shut down. So I remember talking to him right before he left, and I said, he was like, you ready for March Madness? And I was like, oh, I'm so excited for March Madness. Little did I know it would be canceled like 2 days later. But this interview is great because obviously things have changed with coronavirus and everything that's happened. But Jay gets into what he saw in Barstool and why he invested in our company, and also his backstory, which is fascinating. I think we both appreciate that because a lot of things we didn't know about him.
He's so cool. I mean, the fact that he grew up in Vegas, son of a poker dealer, and ends up in Harvard. I mean, that was a pivot that I was not expecting.
Yes.
But such a humble guy, so grounded, has always been good with numbers. But, he also was an athlete. He was a quarterback. And I think when you put all those things together, son of a poker dealer, quarterback, went to Harvard, and he's just gritty. And what he did by buying Barstool when he did, I have to give myself a little credit because I was first to the market.
Yep.
And I remember you text me late at night and you go, I love your quote. You said Barstool's a $1 billion company before anybody. And I do believe that Jay has a tremendous deal and a great partnership with Barstool. I really liked his story.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to talk to someone like Jay who, you mentioned it. His mother was a blackjack dealer. No one in his family went to college. And he ends up playing quarterback at Harvard. And he is, I've spent some time with Jay both, before this, after this, in the process of Penn buying Barstool. We went out to a couple meals. And he is such an unassuming guy in a great way. I didn't know he went to Harvard. You can hear it in this interview. I was shocked when he said it because he'd never mentioned it before. And that's the type of guy he is. He's just down to earth. Really just a regular person who's had tremendous success and climbed the ladder in his industry. And I'm so happy to be working with him because he's someone I trust, and he's someone that I know that I can talk to on the phone if I need something.
I think he's the first guy that went to Harvard that didn't mention it in the first two sentences.
Right. It's crazy. That's who he is, though. That's really who he is. So it's a really fascinating interview, and I think that if you're a longtime Barstool fan, you can get you can glean from this why he saw so much in Dave, myself, Barstool in general, and why he decided that the partnership was a good move for Penn, and how he believes in the vision that we have, which is always fun when you do business with someone and there's a shared vision. It's such an exciting feeling to have. So Jay's a great interview. Before we get to Jay, a quick word from our friends at Cross Country Mortgage. So we've been talking about it. If you've listened to a couple of the other interviews, Cross Country Mortgage, they are the number one place. They've been doing it since 2003. They're a mom and pop type shop. They're the number one place if you are trying to get a mortgage, if you have questions about getting a mortgage, if you want to just learn the fundamentals of mortgage lending. They will do it quick, fast, easy, stress-free, and it's all done online at ccmlens.com/corp. ARod, I know that you own many homes. You're a big proponent of the mortgage. You're a big proponent of building personal equity. You told me the story back in the day when you were in Seattle. You started investing in homes almost immediately because real estate is the greatest investment. Mm-hmm. They don't make more land. Mm-hmm. So getting a mortgage, you might say to yourself, oh, I don't have the savings for it. I don't have the credit score. That might not be true. You should just go online or pick up the phone and talk to Cross Country Mortgage, and maybe you don't have it right now. Maybe you are not ready to buy a home, but you know what they can do is they can tell you what steps you need to start taking to get to that point where you can have the American dream and own your own home. And Cross Country Mortgage, they do it the best, whether you're a first-time home buyer, military vet, if you have less than stellar credit, anyone out there who's thinking to themselves, I've always wanted to own a home, but I don't feel like I have the right, tools to do it. Well, Cross Country Mortgage has all those tools for you. They're licensed in all 50 states, offer a broad portfolio of traditional and niche loan products, and they deliver fast closings with a highly efficient process. Cross Country Mortgage puts their customers first by providing the tools and resources for loan officers to succeed within their own office. So your loan officer that you'll be paired with knows your area of the country better than anyone else, and it's all done at ccmlens.com/corp. To learn more about your future home buying experience, that's ccmlens, ccmlens.com/corp to learn more, ccmlens.com/corp to learn more. Cross Country Mortgage, LLC, NMLS 3029, Equal Housing Opportunity. Go to crosscountrymortgage.com for licensing and disclosures. Okay, here he is, Jay Snowden.
You're listening to The Corp, presented by Barstool Sports.
Okay, we now welcome on a very special guest to The Corp. He is good-looking, brilliant, charming. Also, in full disclosure, he's my boss now.
How about Jay?
It is Jay. That's true. That was good. That was good. Fuck. You just one-upped my great intro, but that was great, ARod. So I'm with both of my bosses. It is Jay Snowden from Penn National Gaming, CEO, who recently acquired 36% of Barstool. So Jay, I told you before this, you're going to be in a season with Kevin Durant, Jimmy Fallon, J-Lo, a lot of big names, but in a weird way.
Not sure why I'm here.
Hold on. This interview, though, is going to be one of the biggest ones because our audience, my audience, is going to listen to this being like, should I like this guy? So no pressure.
No pressure.
But it's great to have you on, and it's great to have you here. And let's start there with kind of getting you acquainted with our audience. Let's start from the beginning. Let's start from how you got into the gaming industry, how you grew up, all that stuff.
Yeah. So my story is really kind of wacky, unorthodox. You meet people in the industry and they kind of got into it after their college years or knew somebody in the industry and got into it. I grew up in Vegas, born and raised. My mom was a poker dealer. My grandfather, going back even further, moved to Vegas from Iowa in his early 20s because he was a professional poker player. So after World War II, he had made some dollars, opened a bar in Iowa. He got shut down. I think they were doing some illegal poker games there. He packed it up and moved to Vegas where it was legal. And then he had my mom, my two uncles, raised them as a single dad for the most part. And so I'm second generation Vegas. I never had a dad. My dad left my mom when I was 2. And so my mom was always working. And I developed a love for the industry. I hustled a lot, love to play poker still to this day. And
where do you play poker at?
I usually play with my buddies. I don't have time. You go to a casino to play, and you got to put in 12 hours at least in order to give yourself a chance of winning because you're playing against. If you go to some of the casinos on the Strip, you're playing against really good players, and so you might lose your ass the first 6 hours, but you got to be willing to put in another 6 hours to get back your money.
It's hard to find a good game. I love to play poker, but we can't find it.
Yeah, I'll play with you. That's fun.
Really?
Yeah.
You're rich now, so.
Nah, whatever. Close enough. All right, so that's interesting, though, because I think a lot of people don't understand, executives in the gaming industry were either kind of born into it in a, top-level way or they were fast-tracked in some way. You really actually started your mom. I read an article, going with your mom to pick up her paycheck.
Yeah.
as a blackjack dealer and feeling the excitement of a casino and seeing the smiles and feeling the energy, and you were just hooked from then.
Yeah, I didn't really know what it was I was in. I just know I was 5 or 6 years old. I'm with my mom. We're going to the Frontier and picking up a paycheck, and there's lights and there's noise and people are yelling at the craps table and money's flying, chips are clanking, and I liked it. You know, I was like, this is something I think I want to do. So anyway, I went to public school all the way through high school. Played sports, played baseball and football in high school. I was recruited for football for college, and then found my way to the Northeast for college and played football in college. And after I was done playing, I was literally in a car the day after graduation with my best friend, drove cross country back to Vegas, started in the industry 2 weeks later, and never looked back.
So how could you afford, a couple questions, how can you afford Harvard?
Yep.
How'd you enjoy football at Harvard? And were you always a math, or were you more of an English person?
I'll start with the last one first. Always math. My SAT score is really good on the math side, terrible on the English side. I think Harvard would not want me to tell you what my SAT score was because I was definitely there for some football. But I knew that playing football in college was an opportunity for me to get out of Vegas, and I wanted to see something new. I never traveled as a kid. So, I took trips to BYU, took trips to University of Utah. I played quarterback, and I remember sitting in Lavelle Edwards' office on my trip to BYU. And to me, having gone to a big public high school and my buddies were going to Washington State and Colorado, I wasn't thinking Ivy League at all. I wanted to play D1 football. But toward the middle of the recruiting, I had never even thought about an Ivy League school, and somehow they got my name. I don't think they recruited much in Las Vegas at public schools. And Penn called, and Dartmouth called, and Harvard called. And I remember the first time I got the call from Harvard, I pick up the phone, and they say, hey, this is Coach whatever they said at the time from Harvard University talking to you about football. And I was like, yeah, F off. I thought it was my buddy's prank. I hung up on him.
Right.
They call right back. No, this is Harvard calling. So it just kind of triggered for me. So I took my last 3 visits to Dartmouth, Penn, and Harvard. And I remember sitting in the head coach at Harvard's office. My last visit, I was a fish out of water on those visits. I'm meeting all these kids from prep schools and private schools in the Northeast. And I didn't have a lot in common with anybody there. I didn't have any money. I'm a city kid, and good, nice guys that hosted me on those visits, but I just didn't have a lot in common with them. But I'm sitting in Coach Murphy's office at Harvard on my last 10 minutes of my last visit, and he says, "What are you thinking?" And I said, this Ivy League, thank you for recruiting me. Like, I can't believe I walked the campus yesterday. I'm not a Harvard guy. I'm a city guy. I want to play D1 football. And I was just sitting in Lavelle Edwards' office. Like, that's a dream. And Lavelle Edwards put his old tape of Steve Young on. I said, this could be you. You know, one of those deals. And or I'm probably going to go to University of Utah. One of my best friends that I played with was going there. And he said, I understand. He said, you want to stay close to home and play D1. He said, for the rest of your life, I found out he used this line on a lot of people. This wasn't a Jay thing, but it's a great line. He said, for the rest of your life, you're going to be able to tell people one of 2 things. Either you went to Harvard or you could have went to Harvard. And the second one no one cares about. And I remember even sitting there as a 17-year-old kid, and I'm staring at him, and it was probably awkward silence for 10 seconds. And I'm thinking to myself, because my mom in this process, she's working hard. No one in our family ever went to college. So if I went home and told her, I decided I don't want to go to any of these colleges. I just want to start working construction like Uncle Earl or my brother Daniel, who dropped out of high school. She'd have said, whatever makes you happy, go for it. So this decision really was on me through the process. And I remember sitting there and kind of staring off and thinking to myself, I get it.
Yeah.
And I turned to him and I was like, I'm coming here. Like literally 10 seconds after he said that, and that was done.
And credit to you, because I don't know, maybe if I haven't been paying attention, but I didn't even realize you went to Harvard. So you are not one of those guys who tells everyone that you went to Harvard. That never has come up. So credit to you. What was your record against Yale?
2-2. Yeah, I know. We were horrible when we first got there. So our head coach, when he got there, had just gotten there from University of Cincinnati, D1 program that he had turned around, and they brought him in to, like, Harvard they were terrible. And he was slowly putting this team together. He started recruiting guys and that had really no reason being there, but were great kids, hard workers, had great grades. Maybe their test scores weren't great. I was the poster child of that one, and just wanted to change the face of the program. And those are still a lot of my best friends.
So did you go 2-0 junior and senior year?
No, we did not. We won it our senior year, which is what
Okay.
mattered.
All right.
And we won the Ivy League championship.
You're on a 1-0 run against them right now.
So Jay, now you're a city boy. You come from humble beginnings.
Yeah.
Mom's a dealer. You've always been a math guy. So now you graduate from Harvard.
Yeah.
What happens and what takes you to Washington University of St. Louis?
Yeah. So what happens is literally got in the car, drove cross country. I had applied over winter break my senior year to a couple of casino companies. So I applied at Harrah's on the Strip. Funny, that shows how naive I was. I interview and goes well. And so they asked me to come back like the last day before I head back to school on winter break. And I sit down with the head of HR, and I think it was the head of food and beverage, and they said, hey, we liked you. What do you want to do? I think a lot of kids from Harvard just like dropped their resume off, which is what I did. And I said, I don't know what I want to do. I just want to learn. So they said, well, we'll make up an internship program for you. And they said, what do you think you need to be paid? And I was like, holy shit. Like, how do I answer that?
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, my mom has never made more than 30 grand a year in her life. So if I had made more than my mom, like first job, I've made it. And I was like, 32. And they turned back to me, they go, how about 35? And I'm like, damn it. Lowballed. So anyway, that's how it started. And then I worked for Harrah's in Las Vegas for a few years. I was the journeyman. Wherever they needed somebody, send me. So I lived in San Diego for 3 years. I moved to St. Louis, Alex, to your question. And while I was working at Harrah's in St. Louis, they sent me back to get my MBA at Washington University and paid for it, which was awesome opportunity. And then after that, I went to Atlantic City, and I was there for 2 of the last great years in Atlantic City. And then all the casinos in neighboring states opened, and it was in free fall. So my last 3 years in Atlantic City were really tough. But I think I really learned how to operate and be a great leader because we had to make a lot of tough decisions during those years.
Jay, one quick question about your MBA, because we have a lot of our listeners are either going to MBA or thinking about getting their MBA or thinking about going back to Wall Street. Just a quick word, is that something you recommend, and why or why not?
Yeah, I would recommend it highly, and not because I would say I left there as a graduate and I could tell you what I learned in every class. There's some things that you certainly take away, but you go to get an MBA and you're meeting people, if it works out the way it's supposed to, who have already professional experiences, especially if you get an executive MBA, which I did. I was in my late 20s, and most of the people in that class were in their mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s. And so they had been working for 15 years. And so I'm now with people from Boeing and American Airlines. I mean, you're meeting people from industries that I knew nothing about. So, and they, these MBA programs, they'll put you in groups of 5 and then you rotate after 6 months. So I just met a lot of really interesting people, and I think it helped to round out the way that I thought about the industry. Because up until that point, I think my thought process was more myopic. I knew the gaming industry really, really well, but I didn't, it also taught me to be curious, I think, more than I even already was. So now I'm a big reader, and I read very rarely on my own time about my industry. I try to read about other industries and interesting people, sports, of course. So yeah, anyway, I would highly recommend it because I think it's going to help round you out and teach you things outside of what you know within the industry that you're in.
I did poorly on my GMAT and then decided to join Barstool. So there's different paths for everyone.
That's right.
So I'm always curious with this. When you end up being CEO of Penn, was there a point in your career where you kind of took a step back and you're like, wait, I actually have a pretty impressive resume here. I might be on track for something like CEO of a huge gaming, company?
Yeah, big kid, I guess I've never thought about it that way because I knew what I wanted to do at a very young age. I got into the industry right after college, and I loved it more than I thought I was going to. And so my mindset was always, how can I learn as much as possible? Like I'm a sponge. I just love learning about people and interesting things. And I was in LA and San Francisco last week just meeting with tech companies to listen to how they're thinking about this convergence of sports and gaming and video gaming. And I just like to learn. So I guess for me, I was always so focused on how can I, be the best at whatever it is that I'm being asked to do, and what's the next step, and how do I prepare myself for that, and how do I learn as much as possible, that it all just kind of came.
Right.
Like the titles came and the compensation. I never had to ask for a raise or ask for a promotion because I guess the passion and the love of what I was doing maybe showed. And I'm so curious. I was always just trying to learn as much as I could.
That's interesting because I think it's very cliche to say, but I find myself being in the same spot where there were so many days where it's like you love what you do day to day that then you wake up one day and you're like, I've done a lot.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And that kind of segues into, the Penn Barstool marriage, because that was probably the first time where I was like, holy shit, this is real.
It's
like
real.
This is actually happening. Yeah. Walk us through that. Like, where did that start? How were you introduced to Erica and Dave? The beginning, was there a moment where you're like, this is going to work, this is going to be great?
Yeah.
Just kind of, because I think a lot of our listeners don't really know the full backstory of how you thought about it from your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those where I'm happy to say at this point that I was just thinking about it all wrong at the beginning. So when PASPA was first overturned, that was the federal law that banned sports betting. It was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court in May of 2018. And after that, we're looking at ourselves and saying, we're in 19 states. We had just closed on the transaction with Pinnacle. We're in the process of closing the transaction with Pinnacle. We're now in 19 states with 40 properties. This is a states' rights issue. So, man, we just got to figure out what's the right strategy here. What we were missing, of course, was a sports betting brand. We have great casino brands, but we didn't have a sports betting brand. And the audience inside these brick and mortar casinos skews older, right? So slot players, some table games does skew younger, but most of our business is slots, and that tends to skew older and it tends to skew female. So we knew we needed a partner, and we started meeting with all sorts of companies, the European online operators. Maybe that was the right approach because they've been in this business with online sports betting for years over in Europe. We met with media companies, mostly the big ones initially, the Foxes and NBC, CBS, Disney, you name them. We met with the regional sports networks, and I wasn't really sure what the strategy was. I just knew we were missing something. And so we were meeting. One thing that became clear in my mind probably 6 months into the process is that whatever partner we decide to go with, we have to make sure that we have complete alignment with them, and that we have to make sure that we're all tied to the same end result. Okay. So if we're going to partner even with a Disney, for example, or a CBS, I was thinking I really want to create a joint venture so that they care about this as much as we do. Mm-hmm. And whatever we do with them is so fully integrated. It's not reading an ad off a card that you guys get paid to do, and it's part of the job. But if it's organic and it's really integrated in everything that Big Cat does because he believes in it, for example. And what I found was when we were meeting with the big media companies, no knock on them, they're just big.
Right.
They're huge and bureaucratic, and we're meeting with people in those companies who are very excited about this potential partnership. But then you'd ask the question of, so I won't use names, but what does the CEO think about this opportunity? Well, we haven't talked to him yet. Would your outside board members consider getting licensed in 19 states? Absolutely not. Okay, we're wasting our time. On to the next one. So we had probably met with 12, 15 companies, and we were introduced to Barstool. I believe it was your guys' head of development,
Yes.
DVE.
DVE, yep.
He knew about the Penn story. We knew the Barstool story, but we didn't know you guys were interested in potentially in partnering up. So I think he brokered that deal. And look, you knew in the first meeting. There was a preliminary meeting, which was interesting, and I wasn't in that one. And Chris Rogers, my head of strategy, and John Kaplowitz, our head of interactive, called me right after because I had said we got to find the right partner, and I had all these boxes they had to check, and they're like, "There's no partner out there that checks all those boxes." I'm like, "You will find them." And they called me like little kids after that initial meeting with Erica and DVE, and they said, "This is it. Like it checks on my Barstool. Like no way." So let's schedule a meeting next week. So we scheduled a meeting next week, and it was Erica and DVE and El Prez. And then I brought my head of strategy, head of interact. So 6 of us in a room. And you start going through the list. Like, what are you guys looking for in this sports betting opportunity? And they're like, well, we need access to the opportunity. We don't have that, of course. We're not casino operators. We also don't know how to operate a sports book. We know how to bet on sports, and we love sports, but we don't know how to operate a sports book. I'm like, okay, well, we check those boxes. Mm-hmm. We also would love to have destinations because today as a company, we do all of these events. We do game day parties on college campuses, but we're doing them in a parking lot at Dunkin' Donuts or something. And it would be great if we had a place to do those, like a real destination, because our audience would love that. And the turnout would probably be even bigger. We checked that box. We're in a lot of great college towns and a lot of big cities with sporting events. And they turned to us and said, well, what are you missing? And what we're missing is a brand. And by the way, a brand that we want to lead with. That was very important to Dave and Erica. They didn't want to be part of a machine where they were going to be, Barstool was part of something else, but the lead brand wasn't Barstool. And we wanted to lead with Barstool. And that was Dave Portnoy smiling ear to ear. That was a big deal. And they also knew that they needed a partner, and they wanted to activate their audience. So you should go through the list of what did Penn need? Check, check, check. What did Barstool need? Check, check, check. The last big thing for me was all around structure. Like, we wanted to structure this in a way that, again, we're aligned.
Right.
So it's not just we invest in Barstool, and Dave and Erica and Dan KATZ and others sort of quote unquote cash out, and they're like, oh, we're on to the next thing. Right. We're rich. And it was important to us that we had alignment. So I remember the second meeting we went to, I said, something that's really important to me, and not because it's important to Jay, but because I think it's important to the success of this partnership, is the consideration. And what would you guys, the two of you, Erica and Dave, think about 55% Penn stock, 45% cash? And it was like that moment. I remember like the second it happened, I was expecting them to say, we got to go talk outside real quick, like that. We weren't thinking about it that way. And they didn't look at each other. Eyebrows weren't raised. They didn't ask to recess outside the room. They both looked at me and said, we want the same thing.
Yeah.
Because if we do, if it's all cash, it's one time in nature and we're done.
Yeah, we walk away.
We walk away.
Right.
And if we do this in equity, and this is structured the right way where it's done more equity over time, which is the way we've structured this, then we're all in this for the long term. And we're in it for driving value to Penn shareholders, which can be doing events at the properties.
Yep.
It can be retail sports books that you guys are helping us with this Positive Vibes Only tour and visiting 4 properties in 4 days and activating your audience at our properties. We're going to have a blast doing that. But guess what? That's as good for Penn as the success of our sports betting app.
Right.
And I didn't want you guys to only be focused on the sports betting app. Let's be focused on what matters and doing this brick and mortar. And that's what, probably talking too long to a simple question, but
it's great. Yeah,
our strategy,
people don't understand this. Yeah.
Our strategy, I think, is really unique in that we have competitors that have brick and mortar casinos and brick and mortar sports books, but they don't have a real compelling online strategy. And there's companies like DraftKings and FanDuel. And I would say this if they were sitting here, no knock against them. They have a great online product and strategy, but they don't have the brick and mortar component. And we have the most properties in the country. We're representing the most states in the country, and we're going to have a kick-ass sports betting app in August that we're launching state by state as we roll. So we have an omni-channel, which is a fancy way of saying we have casinos and we have an online product. So if you want to sit home on your couch and bet on sports or bet on a casino in states where it's legal, you can do that. You want to get off the couch and go party at a casino, you can do that, and you can do it all with Penn and Barstool.
Yeah.
That's sort of the magic of how I thought this could all come together.
Let's talk a little bit about the acquisition price of $450.
Which is a deal compared to what you had us at.
That is
ARod
true.
said we were a $1 billion company.
I watched that.
Well,
Just a heads
it's
up.
That's why I knew I got a steal, because
Just a matter of time. Just a matter of time.
He helped anchor the negotiation.
Walk us through how you came up with $450 and what made you comfortable, which to me is a very attractive price because I'm bullish on Barstool Long. Why were you so attracted to that price?
So the first part of your question is actually really simple answer. It was the price that we were asked for by the Chernin Group. Peter Chernin and the team there said, $450 is the price tag. And so we got that early in the process. That was very important. Like, are we even in the right ballpark? We got that. And I remember walking into my head of strategy, Chris Rogers' office. I was in the hallway when it came through, and I was so nervous to open the email because I was like, this deal could be off, right? If they say it's worth $5 billion or something, like the deal's off. And I open it up and I see the number, and I was like, I'm not offended by that.
Right.
I wasn't like, hey, this is they're idiots, but it was like, I'm not offended. So that was a big deal, and I felt like the deal's probably going to get done. But what we did, Alex, as we said, got your price tag. Let's not talk about that for now. Let's talk about all the other stuff. And if all of the other stuff comes together the way that we need it to as a company, then $450 is probably the price tag. If we have to give on things throughout this negotiation, then $450 we think is too high and that needs to come down. Look, in my heart of hearts, I felt $450 was a very good price. It was one of those transactions where you really had 3 parties. You had Dave and Erica and everybody at Barstool as owners of Barstool, 40%. You had the Chernin Group, Peter Chernin and Jesse and Mike that owned 60%. So those are sort of two parties that might be motivated by slightly different or entirely different things. And then you had Penn as the third party. And when we announced the deal, it was one of those where Chernin got the price tag they wanted. They got all cash, so they were very excited about that. Dave and Dan and Erica and everybody at Barstool really excited. They got a partner. They're living the dream. They're now publicly traded. Like all these things that were really, really important, leading with their brands. So very happy. They got Penn stock that they now have. They have a currency they can look at every day. Right now, it's not a good time with coronavirus to look at it, but they have a currency they can look at every day and understand the value of that investment, which I think is very important. They're thinking every day about how do we do things that are good for Penn and Penn shareholders, because that's the way that I wake up and think every day.
Yeah.
We were excited because we felt like $450 was a very good price, and I'm a huge believer in the brands. I think Barstool is an absolute hidden gem. And I say hidden not because people don't know about it. I don't think people generally, fans do, but even people who are fans probably don't appreciate how powerful Barstool is. And it's so unique in that it's the only media company out there that speaks to their audience the way that audience wants to be spoken to, and that they understand and that they get, and on the platforms that they spend all of their time on. You talk to people in their 20s and 30s and even early 40s these days, and they're not watching TV. They don't consume TV and radio, and social media is such a big part of their life. And you guys you're experts. You're the best at it.
And I would imagine our gambling history probably had a lot to do with it too, because Dave and I would always laugh when we'd look around trying to hire more people to talk about sports gambling. Like there's no one out there. It was always very hard to find people who were authentic about it, who lived it and enjoyed it. And having that aspect, I'm sure, was a big attractive part of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I should have mentioned that, but to me, I feel like people know that about you guys.
Yeah.
Dave started this thing, handing out newspapers at the T stops in Boston, found you in the early years, Chicagoland, like you doing what you love, which is sports, betting on sports.
Yeah.
That's who you guys are. And so it's also great, like in the early conversations, and Dan, I remember, we're having lunch before the deal was announced, and we sat next to each other at lunch. It's like you just couldn't stop talking because our minds are racing about all of the things that we can do. And why is that? Because you're living your dream right now. This is your passion and you're living it.
Yeah.
And you're being rewarded for it. Like, what a great feeling. I feel the same way. Like, I'm in my dream job and I'm being rewarded for doing what I love to do every day that I get up. And now there's new challenges, and I love that too. And I love this convergence of sports and media and tech and my gaming industry, because it's an opportunity to learn again. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, who you guys are at your core was a huge component.
Yeah, Alex, it's interesting, and we haven't talked about this, but what Jay was talking about, the passion for it day to day, we found that where like Dave and I have gone to meetings where we're sitting and actually helping build an app, a sports gambling app, or we're going to casinos, and like I made this joke before, but we would walk into a casino, do a tour, and get to point out like, all right, this is how I would do this is how I do that. It's like we're just two guys who love this and would be doing this anyway. If you told us we would do this for free, we'd do it for free. So it's that passion that I think makes it a perfect deal.
That's right.
Because everyone's doing what they love.
Alignment.
Yeah, which is a very key, message to anyone out there who's listening and like, maybe lost in their career. It's like if it is cliche and it does sound sappy, but when you do find something you truly love, it makes everything else kind of click.
I'm a big believer in that, Big Cat. And I try to answer when you're asked a question, I'm sure you get asked a lot, like, how did you, like, this job, amazing, Dan, like, good for you. And I don't think, it's not realistic to say to people, whatever your dream is, go. Like,
no.
I don't think that's realistic. What I do think is realistic, though, is that we all have core competencies. We all have things that we're really good at naturally. All of us do. And we have things that we're not good at naturally. And what I would just say is to people, try to find that job or that line of career path that takes advantage of what you do naturally really well and that you enjoy. Saying like, I'm going to go find that perfect job for me tomorrow it's not realistic.
And it doesn't really exist, because
doesn't.
Even as we say that, the passion we have, there are definitely days where it's like, I don't like this, I don't like that.
No question. But I think if you, like, I have friends that I grew up with, and some of them found the right jobs, like great personalities, outgoing, and they're doing sales for pharmaceutical companies and they're killing it. and they're taking people out. Like they're being themselves and they love it. And then I have friends with similar personalities who are in jobs where it's same thing every day in, day out. And some of them are even doing well financially and they're miserable. And so I always say, like, just find like what are you great at? What do you enjoy? And what are the jobs that sort of allow you to do that, and pursue one of them and then see where it goes.
Jay, talking about passion and challenges, what would you say as a CEO of this company is your biggest joy and the best part of it, and what's your biggest challenge daily?
Great question. My biggest joy day in and day out is the people side. I love talent development. I love putting people in positions where they think they're in a position to fail, but I know they're in a position to succeed long term. They're probably going to have some failures along the way, but seeing people really stretch and tap into what their potential is, even if they don't see it or they don't feel it, but you do. So I'm very passionate about that. When I was COO, human resources, talent development reported to me, and as CEO, it still does and always will report to me. I'm very, very passionate about people, and look, without great people, I can't do my job. And I wake up every day feeling like, challenges are going to come, but we're ready for them because the people we have on our team are the best in the industry. So I feel very passionate about that. That's easily my favorite part of the job, day in and day out. Challenging part, being in 19 states is a blessing because we have this gaming and sports betting opportunity in 19 states. I won't say it's a curse because it's not a curse in any way. It can be challenging because in being in 19 states, there's not one set of rules.
Right.
There's not one set of controls and regulations. And Big Cat, you're going to learn this when you travel with us.
Yeah.
The good and some of the challenges.
I already have, yeah.
You're learning, right? So in East Chicago, you can do this and we can sell tickets this way. And, part of the package is 2 drinks.
Right.
Then we travel to another state, can't sell drinks as part of a package. So it's going to be, this is the price and it's a cash bar. Or, you can walk back a house with a badge, or you can't walk. So there's a lot of regulations that, we have people that do this full time to keep us on track for what we need to be doing in each of these 19 states, but renewing licenses. And I'm licensed in 19 states, and within those states, sometimes it's gaming and horse racing and lottery. So I think I have 35 licenses. Wow. And if you saw, Alex and Dan, what I have to provide for each one of those, it would shake you to your core. I mean, they know every penny of my life, where it sits, how long it's been sitting there. They know everything about everyone in my family. They go back generations and they look at, what my grandfather did as a poker player. I mean, it's pretty intrusive.
Yeah.
I signed up for it, so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that it's one of those things that comes with the job, that it takes a lot of time, and it can be challenging because we're in 19 states.
We're going to get back to Jay Snowden in a second, but first I want to talk to you guys about home security, and I want to talk to you about the best home security out there, the easiest home security out there, the home security that has no frills, no extra, costs that you can't see, no technicians coming and going around your house. It's called Simply Safe. Simply Safe is the best home security company in the world. I feel confident saying that. Most trap you with high prices, tricky contracts, and lousy customer support. So while there are a lot of options out there, Simply Safe is the only no-brainer that I know of. Simply Safe's got everything you need to protect your home with none of the drawbacks of traditional home security. It's got an arsenal of sensors and cameras to blanket every single room, window, and door tailored specifically for your home. Professional monitoring keeps watch day and night, ready to send police, fire, or medical professionals if there's an emergency, and you can set it up all yourself. Under an hour it takes. Under an hour, just peel and stick the sensors exactly where you need them. No technician required, and there's no contract, no pushy sales guys, no hidden fees, and no fine print. All of this starts at just $15 a month, and I'm not the only one who thinks Simply Safe is great. U.S. News & World Report named it the best overall home security of 2020. So try Simply Safe today at simplysafe.com/corp. You get free shipping and a 60-day risk-free trial. There's nothing to lose. That's simplysafe.com/corp. simplysafe.com/corp. Go check them out, and you will be very, very happy. Okay, here we're going to go back to some more of Jay Snowden. All right, let's talk sports betting real quick.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm passionate about it. The growth of sports betting across the country. First of all, do you think, like, if you could guess when it's going to be legal in all the states or the majority of the states, what would that guess be?
It's moving so fast, Dan, and PASPA getting overturned less than 2 years ago, and we're live now in 20 states. Like, who would have thought 20 states? New Jersey, you knew because they were the one challenging this at the U.S. Supreme Court, but 20 states, I wouldn't have guessed. So I would say you're probably going to have 75 to 80% of the country have access to legal sports betting in the next 4 to 5 years. Maybe higher than that. I might be conservative in what I'm saying, but it's going to be the vast majority of the country.
Now, the second part of the question is, for the first time, I would imagine in the gaming industry, this is as much an investment in sports betting as it is an investment in tech and the growth of technology, because that's going to be where you see the big upside. So has that been difficult to basically transition maybe more, you've been brick and mortar your whole career to now, hey, we got to figure out the cutting edge tech. We got to be at the forefront of everything that gets done. Otherwise, we're going to be left behind.
Great question.
Thank you. I know. It actually sounded great coming out.
Actually, the way it came out, total pro.
It was one of those moments where I was like in the middle of it. I was like, dude,
don't mess it up.
Fucking nailing me.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, that is where I spend all of my time right now, because I was reading a story the other day that 85% of companies, this is a very high percentage, and that means it's odds are against me. 85% of companies that are brick and mortar retail established that attempt to go digital fail.
Wow.
And the reason why they fail, there's usually two primary reasons. One, they're not all in. They're kind of dipping the toe, and we're saying all the right things, but are we organizationally doing all of the right things? And then number two, they end up with factions within their company. It's the we, them, us, they.
Right.
The new people are spending all the money and they don't make money. We don't get the money. We make the money. And so we've done a ton of work on this, and I'm not saying we're there yet, but both of those are things that are very top of mind for me. We just had our company-wide leadership meeting in early February. We had Dave and Erica there as the guest speakers. And we spent an entire day, and I gave people in advance, they had to read articles on the Walmarts and Targets and companies that got Amazoned, and how some have responded well and others are really struggling internally on how to adapt and move their business and pivot. So I think we're as ready as a established brick and mortar company can be, because we also reward people with Penn stock within the company. So even if you're working at a property and you might look at it sort of myopically otherwise, of like, this is my world, I don't want to share my customers, and if I do, it's bad for me, we issue Penn equity to our property leaders as well. And so they get it. And when we're talking about what's best for Penn is good for everybody in this room of 250 leaders in the company, sign them up. They get it. And they're also looking at, we gave them case studies of here's what happens to companies that don't wake up.
Right.
They go down.
Right.
And so we want to make sure that we're a leader in this space. And if we do this right, we can have the most compelling strategy, because in our case with sports betting and gambling, having a brick and mortar presence and online is more powerful than only having one of those.
That's interesting. You mentioned the like we versus them thing, because that does happen. And I've never really thought about it that way, but it absolutely does, because you have people who are brilliant technology developers, app developers that know things that a common guy like me would never be able to process.
Yes.
So there's that natural tension, I don't know what you're doing. I can't even wrap my head around what you're doing. And they look back and they're like, you're just doing, regular antiquated things. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's something that you're consciously trying to bring everyone together on.
Have to. We have to evolve. I don't want to say we have to evolve. We need to evolve, because we want to be leaders in this. And I don't want to be playing catch up to somebody else. I think that, DraftKings and FanDuel have sort of, who knew they were going to be competitors of ours when they launched daily fantasy sports and did all those commercials 5-6 years ago, but now they are. And they have compelling apps, they have good technology teams, and they're continuing to make their products better. So look, we have an office in Philadelphia that is the interactive team. That's where they sit. It's great for recruiting. And we've got a team of 60 product developers and engineers. You've met many of them, Dan, that we're working on building this app. And I'll tell you, I don't like being second or third to develop something. But in this case, I think it's an advantage, because sports betting is still at its infancy. It's only been live in a few states. And yet we're able to look at everyone else's sports betting apps and say, we like that, we don't like that, we like this. And just, you're kind of taking the best of ideas. The beauty of what we can create on the technology side, Dan, is that what we have that no one else has, and they can't just get or buy is the people behind Barstool. You're a huge part of that. And for people to be able to go onto our app and somehow interact with Big Cat and El Prez and others on your team that are passionate about sports betting is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we can do that no one else can offer. So when you go to our app, it's not just transactional, a money line, over, under, but you're going to be able to maybe somehow interact. I don't want to give too much away. A lot of the
I don't want to give too much away either, but let's just say some of the things that Dave and I have been harping on for a very long time, we might have solutions to.
There could be.
So Jay, you talked about adapting and pivoting, and it's such a disruptive world. You describe yourself as scrappy and disruptive. But talking about baseball is a two-part question, and Dan, I want you to kind of chime in here. One is the game. I remember when my father grew up, growing up with my father, there was two main sports. There was baseball and boxing. There was really no NFL and very little basketball. There was college football. But baseball and boxing ruled the world. And then I felt like the game got a bit of a straitjacket, kind of was tied to their history and their legacy so much that you had a scrappy and disruptive leagues like NFL, gambling was a big part of that, NBA and David Stern and his movement, and it just blew right by us. The two-part question is, what role would gambling play in the growth of baseball for the next several decades, one? And two, if both of you were commissioners for one season or so, what are some of the things you would do to make baseball great again?
Yeah. Let me tackle the first one. You tackle the second one.
Okay.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. I have some thoughts, but I want to hear your thoughts on that. I think, look, if I'm the commissioner of a league and I'm thinking about sports betting and how does this impact my league and my product, I think the legalization of sports betting is an absolute gift because it was already happening, but it was happening illegally. It was happening underground, and it was happening unregulated. Now it's legal in many states and it's growing rapidly. It's above board and it's regulated. And so you have visibility into who's betting and how are they betting and betting patterns. And it's going to be, I think, easier for people to understand and for both the gaming companies that are taking the bets as well as the leagues, if they're working together the way that they should, to know what to guard against and what to protect against. And so now if you're a baseball commissioner, man, what you hear and what they know is that the younger audiences aren't watching the game. Like you can't put a 25-year-old in front of a TV for 3.5 hours unless they're binging on something they want to watch on Netflix. They're not going to watch baseball for 3.5 hours, but would they if they had their device in their hands and they're able to bet on, who's going to score most in this inning, who's going to get the next hit, is the next pitch a strike or a ball? For baseball, I think it's probably more important than any other sport because baseball needs a shot in the arm. The games are long and the game is slow enough, which is usually not a good thing, but in this case is slow enough where you can place bets between every pitch. Basketball's tough, man. It's flying up and down, three-pointers, a rebound, and it's a lot harder to bet in game. NFL, once it gets hurry-up offenses, you can do it, but it's harder. Hockey's fast-moving. Baseball, what a gift. What an opportunity.
It really is the perfect thing. And it's we had a free-to-play app this past fall called Barstool Bets, and we did it for the World Series. And I've been sports gambling my entire life, and I was like totally caught up in the fact that like, hey, you can, inning to inning, pitch to pitch, having that ability, like Jay said, like you can say, okay, in the fifth inning, the home team or the road team will score more runs, and now you're locked into that inning, unlike you would have been, and we're talking the middle of July, you can do that, and so I do think gambling with baseball is going to be huge. They're going to have to let Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. Otherwise, it'll be very hypocritical.
I like it.
That'll be the first step. And then you're getting in the Hall of Fame, which I'm going to probably give the speech for.
I like it more.
But yeah, I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be
You didn't answer my
awesome.
question.
What? Oh, the commissioner?
Yeah.
Well, I would embrace gambling. That's number one, because I think what you're going to find, you've seen the NBA do it, where the NBA has kind of open arms to it. NFL, NFL's always different.
What else besides gambling?
Well, I mean, we've talked
cool.
about it, but the ability to share highlights and the MLB, I understand their thought process behind it, how they basically have created a library of highlights that you have to use their stuff, but they really have kind of shot themselves in the foot because people don't watch sports the same way they did 20 years ago. They watch sports where if a highlight happens on a big game, a big dunk or some, touchdown, you see it on Twitter and then you go seek out the game. Yep. If you see, a pitcher is throwing a gem of a game, you're going to want to see the highlight on Twitter and then you go watch the game.
So explain that real quick. If Aaron Judge has a walk-off home run,
right,
versus Steph Curry shoots a game-winning shot.
Steph Curry hits a game-winning shot. It's on Twitter within maybe 20 seconds.
Wow.
If Aaron Judge hits a walk-off home run, you have to wait for the Yankees and the MLB account to post it for it to be on Twitter. Obviously, people will post it illegally, but then, MLB will walk around and DMCA everyone and get their Twitter accounts suspended. So I think with the attention span of basically the entire culture now, being first and being very immediate is so important. The MLB kind of gets left behind with that.
That's a good point.
So another couple of ideas.
Yeah.
One, I don't know how to solve for. You probably have a lot of ideas, Alex, which is how do you speed some things up? Because the games just last. They just last too long. And I grew up playing baseball. I love baseball.
Yeah.
I can watch games. My son plays baseball. He'll watch with me. But most kids his age are there's nothing worse than watching baseball. The other one that to me is a no-brainer, and I didn't really have an appreciation for how big it could be until I was watching the highlights from a spring training game. Did you guys see when they had Rizzo mic'd up?
Amazing.
Yes.
So good.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
He's saying next pitch fastball, bam, he hits a single into center field. I'm going for two. Oh, maybe not. That whole now I'm in the mind, because everybody wonders, because you did it a million times, Alex, but when you get to first base after a hit and you and the first baseman are chatting, I'm always like, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
Are you guys talking about something you both did last summer? Are you talking about the game? Are you talking about what you're going to do Friday night? You're talking shit, you don't like each other. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I think fans would embrace that in a major way. I think that little tests, they probably thought, oh, that was cute. I would be all over that if I was Manfred.
It's going to be very hard, though, because I'm sure you can speak to this, but baseball players being superstitious as they are, we mic you up and you go 0 for 4. You're never getting mic'd up again.
I don't believe in that, because you see what LeBron James, he volunteers in the finals, game 1 and 2, to be mic'd. He says, hey, I want to be mic'd, because what happens to revenues is they spike, they jump, right?
Yeah.
In baseball, it's a challenge to get our players, whether it's the union or Major League Baseball, I'm not sure who it is, maybe it's just a combination, but they got to get it right. You can't get these guys mic'd. But let's just say this. If the three of us were to short baseball, we would say to Major League Baseball, okay, I want 3 things. Number 1, I never want you to show us the 60 batting cages, because from 4 to 7, kids are awake. You got to shut that down. Okay, that's the most exciting part of the game. That's the number 1 rule. Number 2 rule is I never want players mic'd, because if players mic, you're going to get a revolution like you had the other day. Rizzo, I had 30, 40 people sending me the Rizzo. It was so cool. Can't do that. Yeah. Okay? And number 3, you slow the game down even more. If you do that, we'll put $1 billion bet and short the game.
Yes.
So, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
You have to be disruptive, and I do think that we have the right leadership in Manfred and Petitti, and they're kind of scratching the surface, but
I also think the Astros controversy is going to be great for baseball, because it's a story that now, in a weird way, it actually has worked out that now everyone's going to want to watch when the Astros are playing, and whether they're
playing
going
the Dodgers for sure.
I know. All right, so wrapping up real quick, I had 2 last questions I had to ask you, and I usually use this time to ask maybe stupid questions, but people want to know it. When a pit boss takes your player card and they disappear for 10 minutes, what the hell are they doing? There's no way it takes that long.
It's not. I wish my answer was better for you. This is a pretty shitty answer.
What are they doing?
The systems are slow, and they're back over at the computer just punching in your information.
I forget half the time. They'll take it, and then they'll come back 20 minutes later. I'm like, oh, geez, okay.
A lot of them are overstretched, and
Okay.
so they're watching 8 games, and
All
so
right, so
they're
we need to get that up.
They're grabbing your card.
Yep.
But they're grabbing 7 other people's cards, and they're also watching the games. They're trying to punch this in while they're watching games. So it's not a great answer.
Okay, and then ARod, you obviously know this, being around me for the last few years, that I have a proclivity to just say whatever's on my mind and maybe ask stupid questions at stupid times.
Careful, you're talking to your boss.
We were in a big meeting. No, this has actually happened. We were in a big meeting before the deal got done. And I asked, almost as a throw-in, I was like, hey, how about I get to go view all the Eye in the Sky rooms? And Jay was like, no, you can't. That's illegal. And I was like, but come on, man. Like, I'm not going to do this deal without it. So just tell me how cool it is in there. I want to know how cool it is in the Eye in the Sky room.
Did you guys ever watch that TV show called Las Vegas? I think it was called. And they had like the young guy that ran the casinos, and his office was like 100 cameras.
Yeah.
Watching everything as it happened. That's not how it happens. Okay? So surveillance rooms, you'd walk in and you'd be like, I wish this was something. I actually don't want you to see surveillance rooms. I want it to be, Big Cat, what you have in your minds. Just let it be that. Because what it is it's a dark room of hardworking team members that don't talk a lot because they're all watching all these cameras everywhere. And not a lot of excitement. You know, every once in a while something happens and we have to rewind tape and go back.
That's exciting.
And watch. That can be exciting, but that doesn't happen every day, all day. Usually anyway, this is a boring answer.
Did you think it was stupid when I asked that? Did you walk out and you're like, what's that guy's problem?
People are fascinated with surveillance rooms
all I want.
until they see one.
Okay, fine. That's a good answer. I will never.
I'm going to show you one.
No, now I don't.
They're all the same. I'm going to show you one, and you'll never ask again.
I got a couple of rapid fire. One book you recommend or two for our audience?
Oh man, I'll tell you what I've been so big into podcasting lately, and I've been so big into reading up on tech. Like I'm big on how can I learn as much as I can about things that I don't know. So I typically don't read fiction. I tend to read biographies. I was big into the presidents. I love reading about JFK, Abraham Lincoln, people who accomplished things that blow your mind, especially given the time in which they lived and the challenges they were dealing with. So I'm a big biography guy, and I'm also big on current events. So I spend a lot of my time reading as much as I can about sports. I was a big Barstool fan probably before a lot of my friends because, you know, Barstool is one of those that I would see a headline on ESPN and you read it and you're like, that just scratched the surface. And then you go to Barstool to find out like what really happened, right? So I'm very diverse in what I consume and how I consume. And I read the Wall Street Journal in the morning and then I go to Barstool and then I go to ESPN. Like I'm all over the place. But when I have free time, I'm typically reading biographies on people that I find really interesting.
Coffee or tea?
I'm a tea guy. Never had a cup of coffee in my life.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Favorite-
I know that's weird.
Favorite movie of all time?
This deal? Are we in that grace period?
This will sound...
Psycho answer.
It's weird.
Ever?
No, I've had a sip and I didn't like the taste, so I
Wow.
never did again. I'd like binge on Mountain Dew in college while I was staying up late doing a paper.
Damn.
Anyway, favorite movie. So many good ones. Shawshank, Goodfellas. Those are probably my top two.
Nice. What will be your last meal?
Man. Probably my wife's chicken tacos.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, she just got it perfected. Guacamole, like everything is perfect.
Love that.
I'm a Mexican food snob
Yeah.
growing up out west, so she knows how to do it.
Love it.
All right, last question.
Yeah.
When the whole WikiLeaks thing happened, were you like, fuck, this sucks? Last names, like everyone, Edward Snowden, this is going to be a big deal for me. Not a common surname, like that whole thing.
Yeah, then the movie comes out.
Yeah, it's like
kind of sucks because yeah. Anyway, I would say it never crossed my mind until the first time I went to I travel a lot, and the first time I went to the airport after WikiLeaks, and for the next 6 months, I had to go through hell. Like
Everyone
the
was
pat
like,
down.
this guy.
Yeah, there's like, are you related? No. Yeah, right. Pat you down before you get on. So that kind of sucked, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it all the time, so I really do.
And now
When
you
I
know.
see your name, I'm just like,
He's related to Edward.
Yeah,
He's not telling us.
WikiLeaks.
Well,
Yeah.
Jay, congrats. I mean, I honestly think this is one of the great acquisition in our generation, because I think you're going to look back in 15 years and say, how was I able to buy this great company for only $450 million? Congrats. Really excited for you, and I know you're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, thank you.
Best of
Appreciate
luck.
it. I'm a huge Yankee fan too, so we'll talk offline
Great.
about that.
Yes,
So.
thank
there
you.
we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Jay.
All right, thanks, Big Cat.